What's up, guys? New shop, new project. Let's see what we get into. So I'm excited. I hope you're excited. I'm getting into a project that I have never done in 20 some odd years of building cars and trucks. I'm going to attempt to bag this thing. And with this thing, I mean Bluetooth. I think it will be the most hilarious thing in the world that it not only not has a cab, but it's on airbags. You know, when people are already staring at you as you pull up to wherever you pull up to, wondering how in the world are you driving this? And then you make eye contact and just lay it out. I think it's going to be epic. So I did what every growing boy does in car stuff, and I went on eBay and got the cheapest parts possible because what can go wrong, right? So to do this, we need airbags, of course, airmaxx. They make a decent budget bag, and I'll have plenty of clearance to look at them to see if they're going to go bad. For right now, I'm going to do manual air control. I won't have an air suspension control system, so I got my hoses, some fittings, and a Schrader valve so I can manually up and down. So to do this in the front, we'll need a bag, a plate for the top of the bag, and then they give you these little bucket deals. Nope, that's not it. They give you these little guys that go in your lower control arm, and it kind of locates your bag, if you will. But I also decided I'm going to go full retard on this, and I'm going to try to lay the frame down. So to do that, there's a whole lot of other things that happen besides the normal bagging things. So we're just going to jump into this knowing nothing head first and see how bad we can mess it up. So those little brackets sit on top of the control arm. If you're on a cup like this, it'll actually go in the lower control arm. This cup will almost sit on the ground, and you can see that the bag barely goes on top of it, as opposed to the bag actually sitting on top of it. You're getting like 3-4 more inches of drop, whatever that cup height is. I got some brackets for the trailing arm. This is supposed to mount to the frame. Those brackets mount to the trailing arm, and the bags go right where the coil spring would go. I can do that, but to lay frame, we're going to need to bring this axle way up. So to do that, we've got the monster step notches. These are 10-inch notches. Again, I went with the eBay specials. One thing to note when you buy these step notches, at least the eBay one that I did, it comes tack welded. So all your individual pieces are tack welded, which means you can't just slide this thing down on there because the inner plates here prevent you from just sliding it over the frame rails. And if you're like me and you've got a 3/4 ton truck and you get 1/2 ton frame notches, your frame is actually wider than it needs to be. Then the notch will fit over. So I'm going to have to do some clearancing on that to get this thing to be able to slide into place. And I'm also going to have to remove this center cross member here. So I'm going to get everything leveled up on the frame so that we're level when we weld. And pull this cross member out and see what else we need to do to get this notch in. So I've got all the shocks and springs out of the way. So the rear end on the trailing arms can be moved all the way up to the axle so I can see where my center line is going to be. But to do that, I need to make sure everything is level. So this is a 50-year-old truck. Obviously some things are going to be wonky, specifically when there's nothing on it. I put some jack stands under basically where the cab mounts would be. There's a nice little flat section of frame right there, and I'm going to make everything kind of level off of that. I had some problems with my jack stands. I don't know, I've got I have 2 sets of the 6-ton jack stands from Harbor Freight, but I guess one was made in China on a Tuesday and one on the Thursday. They're about a 1/16 of an inch off, and their little grooves that the frame sits in are a little different. So when we built this building, I had some of these Simpson strong tie brackets left over, and they slid right over top of the jack stands, removed that variance of the different shapes, so I just have a flat platform. So that worked out great for me. But my cross member that goes between the rear here, I was measuring off that because it's strings between the 2 frame rails, and it seemed to be pretty flat. And as I'm jacking things around and adding spacers in and looking at it, this cross member is actually not straight. You can see the gap on this side and the gap on that side. So it was about, well, half a bubble off almost. And I squared it up left to right, driver, passenger, and forward to rear. So everything in the plane of the truck should be square now. And now I can start mocking up these notches to see that they're going to be square. So here you can kind of see where things are headed. Bag's going to be going right in here. This is where the bag is going to mount to. Sure that this portion here is over where it's going to mount down there in the trailing arm. So this might actually need to scoot back a little bit with the shocks and springs out of the way, and you jack up the rear axle. You can see that the center line of the axle is pretty much on here. Now as it comes up more in and past the frame portion here, it's going to want to kind of come forward a little bit because everything's on an arc. So it's going to do this. So a little bit of forward travel may happen. Plenty of room. In fact, we can actually scoot it back some, which would help that line up. So it's all a game of trying to see where your junk fits in there, which that actually looks pretty nice. But as you can see, I've got cross members in the way and quite a bit of frame material there. So I'm going to go ahead and knock these guys out, and then I'll bring this piece back in. isn't an eBay notch. Everything that you go and look at online is telling you this brand or that brand or whatever. Their notches are a little bit smaller, not as tall. This is a giant monster step notch, and it's cheap. So it's not the exact same dimensions as everyone's telling you. Measuring from the bed mount and going back, or measuring from different holes and coming back, but I don't think anyone's done, or at least been non-ashamed to admit that they've used the eBay step notch. So this is a little different animal, and I'm kind of having to figure out kind of a blend of all the things that are going to happen here. So the first issue I have is I got to figure out the absolute lowest I'm ever going to be. This is a 3-inch block. It's kind of hanging here. I've got probably 4 inches worth of block space because of how this is sitting. I can go higher probably, but I probably would never do that. If I put this this plate in here, that's just touching. So it'll bottom out, completely aired out at, what is this, 3 inches, 4 inches of drop, if you will. It'll bottom out on the step notch. Now I could move the step notch forward a little bit, give me more room here, but I'm not getting a whole lot more room back here. I'm getting tight back here. So I could raise the step notch up and give this area kind of open up a little bit, but I'm on the bottom, on the inside, on the, I guess that'd be the inside of the frame rail right here. I'm at the very bottom. This notch is at the even with the frame rail. If I go up any higher, then I'm gonna have to fill that in with some plate or something, which isn't a big deal, but for strength, I'd rather have one piece. So I have this clamp here. This clamp is holding up the control arm. If you look, this cross member is just sitting here to hold my drive shaft for right now. But if you look, the trailing arm is hitting the frame right here. So that's the lowest I'm ever gonna get. I'm probably gonna take a piece of angle iron and, box that in and put a plate on here, make it so I can go lower. So I kind of got to plan ahead. Other issue that I'm having is the back of the bag. That mark right here is the back of the bag. So let's pretend like this is the bag. This is actually my bag. This plate sits on top of it. We're just going to use that as a reference, right? It's about the size of the top of the bag, the plate that it would sit on. It's actually a little bit bigger. So you can see that the width of that is this little Sharpie line I have here to that little Sharpie line. So the more I scoot forward that way, the more I'm going to uncover this bag. And what I mean by that is this is a thick metal plate. The whole truck's going to ride on that. It would normally sit like, imagine this is square. The notch would sit down on this. As I scoot that forward, the notch forward, that essentially means the bag is going to have less and less coverage on here. So when I'm towing, I only have half of that being supported by the weight. Now I could put these bags on the axle, make some little brackets, put them up like so. I'm trying to simplify this and make this as cheap as possible, but I'm not sure right now. With everything I had going on, the simplest approach that I can come up with was my bag would be on the trailing arm briefly until I figure out the bag over axle setup. I'm going to do that for simplicity first, and then eventually I'm going to get to where I can tow with it, being that that's just 2 holes to drill and this bolts in. I won't be able to lay frame like that. I'll be probably 2 inches off laying frame, but I have plenty of other things that I have to do up this way before I'm worried about that. So for now, this is going to go here. My notch placement with everything, how it's going to be set up is I'm 1 1/8 inches behind this bolt hole here, or I guess this will be a cross member rivet. I'm 1 1/8 inches past that to the front face of this piece of metal. This is 3/16, so do your math as you will of where the step notch would be. I just put a step notch in place, laid a piece of metal on top of it, 1 1/8 inches. Boom, there you go. For my height, again, this is an eBay notch. I'm doing what I do here. I probably have way more notch than I need, but for my purposes, I'm 9 3/16 inches from the top plane of this to the bottom plane, well, to the top plane of the frame here. Do with that information what you will. You just want to make sure that your stuff is leveled. If you don't have a 4-foot level, they're like, I think $10 at Harbor Freight. Knock yourself out. I did. So that puts you, gotta make sure you're level this way from notch to notch, level front to back. I made sure I have just a little bit of overlap on that side that I can still, I'm not welding and trying to bridge a gap right there. So that right there is what set my height for everything, because I didn't want to go up any higher and not be able to catch anything to weld against right there. So that set the height back here, which then set my level this way, which, you know, gave me my overhang down here, which is great because I can do this. I can cut that little plate off and do what I did over there and add a little boxing plate to it. Trying to use every part of the buffalo here. So I got this guy mocked in on the second notch. I'm gonna go ahead and burn that in, cut the center out. I'll probably put the rear end in and lift it up and see where it's at. Doing some welding here, and I just so happen to have a chair with an adjustable height that puts me working on this frame right at the right level. If you don't have a welding chair, you should probably get one. Thanks, Lauren. Can't be like those other guys and not show you my welds. Flux core is not that great, but we got good penetration and should be more than enough for what we're going to do here, especially with all the bracing we're going to add. Also got me a new Yes Welder helmet because my old one got smashed somehow. You save $2 by getting Creepy Santa. I'll put a link down there. But keep going. Alright, we got both of these welded all the way in, and the undersides, which always sucks. Raining hot fire down on you. I hate it. Anyways, we're all welded up all the way around. Got good penetration, and I got a little paint on it. So while that dries, I'm going to scoot this differential up, get it on these U-bolts, and then I'm going to try to drop this thing down and see what it looks like. Just, I got to do it. can have an airbag suspension for free. Just take your valve stems out. Oh yeah. All the way on the rim. So I got the rear end installed. I put the bags in place just to kind of sit everything where it's going to be, and brought the trailing arms all the way up. I still have some room here before I touch. Right about in here is where it gets close. I got maybe an inch, half an inch. So it will get lower. I did put this on the ground. These aren't the rims and tires I'm going to be using. They're what I had on the truck. I'll probably do some measurements before I figure what I'm going to run so I can try to get as low as possible. But you can't really see anything with the front not had any work done to it. I did drop the rear with the 31-inch tires on the front, and it looked like a dog dragging worms out of its butt. The back end went all the way down and rested on the bumper. I took the bumper off, and it rests on the rear of the frame, and the U-bolt hits the notch. So that should be extremes of lowest I would ever go. The rear end could go up another inch or two, but there's bags in there, and that's preventing it from fully collapsing. For the purposes of this project, at this stage, I'm going to go ahead and mount the bags to the bottom of the frame rail on the trailing arm. It'll be the simplest way. I'm going to drill 3 holes. It'll bolt through the top and a bolt through the bottom, and that will secure that. The trailing arm would still have an inch or so more travel upwards. Later on, when I want to do that, I can pull the bag out and I'll make some brackets and lay it out further. I'm going to show you guys how to mount the bags in the rear. I did get a template from Simple C10, and I'm running the 2600 bags in the back, so it sends a little construction paper deal and you cut the little bag template out. So I'm going to run a grinder across the bottom of that frame, make sure it's nice and smooth, and then we'll get the template up there and see where I need drill holes. This is the bag template. I cut it out and I cut out the little holes, and it's on the passenger side, as you can see. We're going to set this back so that this edge right here, where it goes from straight to curved, is what's on this corner right there. And then I'll mark it and drill it. Alright, there's my holes. I'm going to get my drill bit, start raining hot pieces of metal in my face. All right, we got both of the bags in here. Now, this is all the way up. I'm at like 150 PSI or something. This is about where my trailing arm is gonna be. I don't really like how low that is at full travel. That trailing arm stays where it stays. So I'm gonna have to do some playing around with the cross member up here in different angles and things, see if I can bring that up a little bit. I did deflate the tire. This is a 29.5-inch tire. So I deflated that so that I would have the 26-inch tire simulation that I'm looking for. I'm probably going to be doing like 315, 30/18s in the back. So this will give me about that tire diameter to see how everything's going to sit. This is all the way up, and this is all the way down. Trailing arm still stays in the same spot. What are you doing? Stays in the same spot. I'm going to have to trim these U-bolts down. I'm going to have to get a different mounting bolt for the bottom of the bag bracket, because that's probably holding that up still. But this is going to be as low as it goes for right now. There'll be some more changes that come in the future for that to get it down lower, but this should give me plenty of lift and a decent ride height where I'm at now with the bags where they're at now. Good job. All right. So in the back here, if I had that step bumper on, which I did before, you can see my dog, but when she moves, you can see the step bumper would be on the ground. So this set the bumper all the way on the ground. I don't have a body or anything, so I think that's where I'm gonna need to be, but we're gonna have to move forward while I wait for the body to come and get here and I figure that out. We're gonna keep moving forward with getting the front done. But for now, that kind of finishes off the rear. I got everything on a little manual setup, which I'm not trying to get super expensive and go like, you know, $3,000 air management system. Probably just gonna get some ball valves and I control it in between the tank, maybe put a regulator on the tank so I only give it the exact PSI that I need for my ride height, and then I can change the regulator in the cab or something. Again, super cheap, super simple. We're gonna keep this thing simple so nothing can really fail, and keep everything where I can get to it. So that's gonna wrap up the step notch install. I also threw the bags in there so you guys can kind of get a feel for that. I'm gonna move on probably to the trailing arm cross member and then the front suspension. So if you guys have been watching or you are starting to watch this, this is gonna be a build series where I go all the way through the truck and spend as little money as possible, eBay, marketplace, that kind of stuff, and get some cool stuff happening like airbags and LS motors and all the things. So hope you guys enjoyed it. If you got any questions, let me know, or if you want to see something, let me know in the comments, and please like and subscribe and share this, and see you on the next one.